The sequel trilogy changed everyone's perspective on Star Wars, for both good and bad. You had high highs and low lows, but with how Ahsoka is going, are they rewriting the sequel trilogy? And why did Baylan abandon Shin? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. Let's jump in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
I feel like we're in a very interesting part of the galaxy right now with Star Wars.
Yeah.
We've got the outside of universe things where you have the struggles with the movies, you have the very good consistency with like the TV shows, and them slowly piecing out every different nook and cranny in the galaxy. You've got the books, you've got the video games are now hitting their stride. But if we take a little bit deeper, if we go inside of the universe of Star Wars, there is something even more specific when you look at something like the storytelling of Star Wars. And that's with the time frame that they're currently exploring in the Mando-verse.
Yeah.
This is a time period that we know quite well in Legends, but we have not seen in canon. And it is a much clearer continuation of the original trilogy than we saw in the sequel trilogy. And the sequel trilogy is that hard stop. And that's where the big problems, I feel, are going to be showing as we get closer and closer to the sequel trilogy timeline, is there's a hard stop when we get to The Force Awakens. And the galaxy is in a much different place. Now that we know more about the galaxy, The Force Awakens is feeling very different.
Very different and very far away. Far away.
And empty.
It's true. Yeah, it feels so... I don't want to compare it too harshly to the original trilogy, but you always kind of have to. But you have to,
because The Force Awakens very much was inspired by the storytelling arc and locations of A New Hope. So, like, they didn't set them up for anything but comparison.
It really felt small. Like, the galaxy just didn't feel very big. Like, it was very much a pigeonhole on Rey and her little quest.
Like 4 people.
Yeah.
And then you get Ahsoka.
And it's huge. I mean, we're going galaxies. Like, we're going way far away.
It's the prequel problem. Every time you have a prequel, we ran into this in the original trilogy and the prequels. You have the idea of what's going to happen. You have an endpoint of all of the decisions that are going to be made. They have to come to this moment. They have to come to fruition eventually to hit the original.
You know, it's interesting. I just had this thought come to me. It's like, I think the sequel trilogy feels small because it is only in Rey's perspective and we're not getting the extra galactic, like, approach to things.
There's no ensemble.
Yeah.
You have a farm girl, scavenger girl perspective on the galaxy.
Yeah, and there's very little about, like, what is politics like? I mean, I guess it's the
clearest thing is Hosnian Prime when it gets destroyed by Starkiller Base.
Right.
But you don't get the importance of those planets unless you read the novelization.
I mean, you barely even get, like, real rebellion content in those.
It's literally just Rey.
Yeah, it's Rey. We're following Rey. And a de facto stormtrooper. Yeah,
I feel like this is the problem here with all of the with the galaxy that they're exploring, galaxies that they're exploring with Ahsoka. You have this like rich tapestry that they're weaving. You have the stories with Mando, which is like the monster of the week that it's become, and this very like vignette based story. Then you have Ahsoka that's telling one story that's going to span across the galaxy and across seasons more than likely, or maybe even TV shows if it picks up into like Mando season 4.
Yeah.
You have Andor, which is on the opposite side of the original trilogy, but still very much ties into this time period that we're exploring. And then you have what will be Skeleton Crew, which is going to be an even more different part of the galaxy that's connected by just being in the same timeline. And this is all in this one era. And it's a limited era.
Right. So are we just being spoiled right now with like having multiple main characters spread out throughout this galaxy, kind of giving this like whole story. Like, are we just being spoiled right now?
I feel like no matter what happens, again, they're not rewriting or retconning the sequel trilogy, but they kind of are, because if you look at the Force in Ahsoka, it's very different than what's going to come into the sequel trilogy. You have a much more free Force, like a free-flowing Force, and it's going to have a perspective that's very different when you look at Sabine and her use case of the Force versus Rey.
It's kind of tricky because, we get all these different directors and their perspectives on things. And yes, Dave Filoni is working very closely with Jon Favreau, and
it had worked very closely with George Lucas.
It seems interesting that these are the stories that we're wondering how they're going to merge. Like, how are these?
Yeah.
How is it going to go from big galaxy full of people being with their lives in tumult and whatnot, and Thrawn and then go to Farm Girl. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
It's going to be difficult. I feel like as we get closer to that point, both Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni in particular, they want to have this time period last as long as possible.
Oh, sure.
When asked what time period or how long time has passed, both Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau had very different answers to that question. And Dave Filoni was very much like, 2 days have passed. Because he knows that there is a timeline that he's limited to how much he can put into this one time period. So obviously he's going to say Mando, both season or all seasons 1, 2, and 3, they took place about less than a year apart. I think he said something like 9 months, and then you have Ahsoka, which is taking place at the same time as Mando season 3.
Oh wow!
So those two things are happening in conjunction.
Ooh.
Or at least Ahsoka's taking place on the later half of season 3, because they do mention the Mandalorian War.
Right.
So, and Moff Gideon. So there's something to do there, but there's a lot of compression happening. So I feel like...
Don't you know that time is different in space?
Yeah. I mean, he's the person that made the world between worlds.
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel like this is what we're going to experience, and we need to have, as we get closer to the sequel trilogy, we're going to need more stories to flesh out that part of the galaxy. We need the stories that are going to bring us more to the tapestry that we already see. We're going to need the Andor style thing that's set in between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. We need some more color that's added in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I feel like Andor has also really spoiled us.
Yes,
also.
they threw a wrench.
Yeah.
I jokingly said that Andor has ruined Star Wars. Because it set the bar so high. Ahsoka is reaching that bar, I feel. But when you look at Mando versus Andor, and I don't want to open this whole can of worms up again, but in my opinion, when you look at Mando versus Andor, you see Andor, which is a much more mature and more well-baked show than when you look at Mando, especially with season 3.
Yeah.
And having those released so close to each other, it just made it even more of a stark contrast.
I think there's space for both of them, though.
Oh yeah, that I'm not saying there's a right way to do Star Wars and a wrong way to do Star Wars. Like you said, there's Mando, which is fleshing out this part of the galaxy. Its goals are very different from what Andor's doing over here.
Yeah,
and then you have Ahsoka that's right in the middle.
That is true. Yeah, Ahsoka's got kind of the marriage of them both, of this mature...
Confined, they put parameters on it.
Yeah. And yet more, just more. They're still playing with political stuff. And but you have to. I don't know. I think that would be something that would be interesting to explore later on. The in-betweens.
Yeah.
Of
the bloodline, Leia... kind of experience.
Yeah. And the fall of was it New Republic?
Yeah.
Fall of New Republic.
I mean,
even the fall of the First Order. What did that look like?
The rise
really?
of the First Order?
The rise and what the aftermath of the fall of the First Order sort of thing. What
after the Starkiller base got destroyed? that time period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need books on that.
But I feel like that's the thing that we're going to have to be dealing with is as we get closer, they need to do more. So that led me to ask the question of like, are they trying to rewrite the sequel trilogy? And I feel like the sequel trilogy, while it was a massive success when you look at like the box office numbers, I feel like they failed a lot in terms of focus on telling a cohesive story that sets up the next thing. They were so close-minded on let's just make the next movie without planning out what we need to do for all three and then what to do after those movies, because we still haven't gotten a movie. Rise of Skywalker came out in 2019. It's been 4 years and we still haven't gotten anything past that. And I feel like they tied the knot on that story. And then they were like, oh crap, we can't just go to the next sequel movie.
Right.
Okay.
Bring back the Skywalkers, folks.
Yeah.
Like,
Time to bring them back.
No.
But again, like even after the sequel trilogy, they're making a 15-year jump into the future for Rey's story and a continuation of that and her much more of the mentorship role. And that's another little mini timeline that they're going to have in between those movies that they can explore.
I think it will be easier to explore those times once they have a solid story for her afterwards. I still think that they're just kind of like, we're not really sure what to do with this
I don't think we're going to see another Star Wars trilogy, personally. I think they're going to continue the path of like one-off spin-offs that might connect to each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In movie form.
Yeah, in movie form.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I don't think we're going to see a Skywalker saga trilogy. I don't think we're going to see Rian Johnson's trilogy. I don't think they think in trilogies anymore because that burned them with the sequels.
Yeah.
Which flipped Star Wars on its head.
It would really surprise me if they don't do more sequels.
Oh, they're going to do more sequels. I just don't think they're going to do more trilogies.
Oh. No, I mean trilogies. It would surprise me if they don't, because that was the ultimate form of Star Wars.
But I don't think Rey's movie is going to be a trilogy, like a start of a trilogy.
I think they could try to make it a trilogy, and it might not be good.
From what they're saying, though, I don't think they are.
Okay.
But if they do, if they release this movie and it is a wild success, and then they make another movie, they're just going to repeat the same mistake that the sequels did, where it was
cycles.
Like, we're going to make this one movie and then we're going to hand it off to a completely different director to make a completely different movie. And then we're going to we're going to get this other guy to make a completely different movie based off of that movie, instead of like, no, they all need to be together and telling one story.
Yeah.
And I think that's the struggle.
I'm hopeful that they will stick to making one story.
Yeah.
But money is money and Disney's Disney. So
with trilogies, though, like you have to, if the first movie of your trilogy doesn't work, then you still have to make two more.
It's true. But I mean, they still made the sequels kind of under that idea. So
yeah.
I'm just saying. I'd be a little surprised.
It's an interesting place in the galaxy, and Star Wars, the universe, all of it. And then I think that's even more exemplified when we look at Ahsoka. And I want to have a discussion on Ahsoka's big surprise, which is just Baylan. Baylan as a character was like the big surprise. We're like, oh, he might be in there a little bit, right? And then as we got closer, I got this itch and was like, I think Baylan's going to be the main antagonist. I don't think it's going to be Thrawn. That ended up being true. And I'd say Baylan is more of the puppet master in this season of Ahsoka than anything. He successfully fooled Thrawn into perceiving him as a mercenary, just a lowly mercenary. When he manipulated this whole thing to be involved with Morgan Elsbeth, to get to this galaxy, to get to this planet, to understand more about the Force. So he's been playing a bigger game of chess than Thrawn has this whole time.
That makes some sense, at least. My gosh, what an interesting character to be like, I know just where to be at just the right time to get in here, to gain this trust so that I can get to this ship, so that I can go over here in this other galaxy. Like,
very Thrawn-like.
Very Thrawn-like, which is probably why Thrawn's like, interesting. I definitely think Thrawn can sense that this guy's got a lot more going on than just
Well,
being
he
a
does
mercenary.
now
For
that
sure, but-
Baylan wasn't in the fight.
Yeah, but yeah, he definitely didn't think that.
Like, he legit thought he was just a mercenary.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, he definitely thought that he had more like ties to the whole thing instead of just like, yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And speaking of the fight, this is what I want to talk about is Balin and Shin. Balin is on his own path, and he feels like at this point in his training, he's given Shin the training necessary. At least in his perspective, to send Shin on her own. But without realizing that Ahsoka was going to be coming, he was a little bit of, he underestimated, I think, her skill set. I feel like he perfectly estimated it against Sabine and Ezra.
Yeah. Yep.
But did not take into account the possibility of Ahsoka coming too. And then you see that fight or that like mental war that he went through, like as he's like, do I go back and help? Do I not? Do I continue on my path? And he eventually goes to that point of like, no, I'm on my path, she's on her path. She will come to whatever decision she needs to make.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask, why do you think Baylan left Shin?
I think he's just discovered, he's been realizing over mentoring this young person for who knows how many years, or even just months. I'm assuming it's years.
I would say years.
They seem to have a knowing of each other.
Yeah.
But for him to have that experience with her, and he even says it, he's like, you're ambitious. And that's great. And that's very much, you're going down a certain path. That's
He's
not
achieved
my path.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he just knows that's just not what I'm about right now. I can't help you. I'm just going to get in the way of your success because I'm always going to be the master and look like I'm overshadowing you sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you got to go out and prove yourself. And I'm sure he assumes, well, because you can't really feel the things that he can feel on this planet, I'm sure he's thinking, she just wants to be with Thrawn. Like this is her purpose.
Yeah, she has identified Thrawn as the powerful character, as someone who is going to give her the next phase of her like journey. And like you said, Baylan realizes that she wants ambition. She wants what the power of old was in terms of like the cycle.
She is in the cycle.
And she's young. She doesn't have the experience that Baylan has watching the Jedi fall, watching the rise of the Empire, and then going through that whole process. She doesn't have any of that. She's only heard stories of it, but she's going to learn through this moment, I feel, of like all along, like what Baylan was going, like what his goal was.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense that she will come to this understanding of what he was doing. Probably will never be able to get to him or reunite with him ever again.
I do have a question because people are theorizing it. Do you think that Shin goes to the light side? It would be a very Star Wars move.
But why? If she's
Sabine?
Fair.
There's something going on between there, whether it's rivalry or something more. See,
this is why I need a rewatch. Like, I need a rewatch already.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't wait for the episode after the finale because we will have prioritized. I'm saying this now. We are definitely going to do a whole binge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I need this.
Yeah.
I want to see how it all pieces together because it's so well done and you know it pieces together.
And I definitely feel like I'm missing little things that mean big things.
Like the whole thing with Ahsoka and her Sith eyes.
Yeah, I did totally miss that. Totally just didn't even see it. Was just like, yeah, she got a little angry there. Okay. Like, it would just so I need a rewatch.
Yeah.
Badly. And I will definitely be looking at this relationship between Shin and Sabine.
It's possible.
It's possible. I don't
think she's dedicated enough to, or she's not dedicated enough, but she's also not lost enough to want to find that meaning. I feel like Baylan has done a good job with giving her the tools necessary to not maybe feel abandoned. I think that's what Ahsoka was thinking is like, oh, hey, no, come with us. We will protect you. It's not a big deal. We will welcome you in, when that's not what she's looking for. She's looking for power.
Yeah.
And that's something that Ahsoka in her new enlightened state can't quite grasp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, never have I thought of Shin as being needy or needing someone to help her.
Yeah.
She's always been very much like an independent person in my short experience, like everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, she is the person that Baylan sends to gather the information from Sabine by herself. And she does a great job with that.
Yep, she did the thing.
And then continues to stand her ground against Sabine with each moment after. And mostly has done more combat alone than together.
Which is fascinating. Especially when we've got
Ahsoka and Sabine
Ahsoka
being
and
like
Sabine.
so tied, and Sabine does not, or Ahsoka does not trust Sabine. And that's fascinating. And that's something that I feel like Sabine and Ahsoka are the most interesting pieces when we look at what the finale is going to bring. The struggles, the friction that was there before they went to the new galaxy, that's going to be there after they got there.
I think Ezra's just going to call them out on it. Be like,
oh yeah,
whoa, work this out, because this is stupid.
I showed this clip to you, but someone found that Shin goes to run. Ahsoka goes to stop both Ezra and Sabine. But Ezra does not go to chase her.
He knows.
It is only Sabine.
Yeah, he knows.
Because Ezra is like the perfect example of a good Jedi. He's what Luke Skywalker should have been in The Last Jedi. And The Force Awakens, the whole sequel trilogy, really. Because he has gone into isolation. He has not given up hope. He has gained the friendship of the local species, and he has learned to tune himself to the Force, using it as a tool, as a weapon, and something that is deeper than what we've seen any Jedi really use it as. Except for Kanan.
Yeah.
He is truly fulfilling the whole arc that Kanan had, where he relied solely on the Force. He was brought to that point where it had to be the Force and him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. Ezra's going to be a really interesting part, especially once we actually find out what it is that Baylan's doing. Because Baylan's got this connection to this planet that I have to assume Ezra has as well.
He's been there for 9 years. There has to be something.
Yeah, he's got to
I do wonder, though, like, why wouldn't he have gone searching? Or maybe he did go searching. That would be the only question I have. Or maybe it's a dark side thing.
Right,
only.
That's kind of the other thing that I would think of. It's like, it's not something that he'd be aware of it, but he'd be like, ooh, no, nope, we're going to protect the locals, we're going to keep away from that spot, and we're going to be okay. Like, it's kind of more of a, like, where the bad guys hang out over there sort of
Bad
thing.
vibes.
Yeah.
Bad vibes.
He was probably busy just ruining Thrawn's plans anyway, so.
Yeah, killing all the stormtroopers. Because that's truly what he's doing. There's a note that, like, his chainmail is made up of stormtrooper dog tags.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
So keep an eye out on that for the next episode. But I feel like all of these discussions are really fascinating when you look at the differences in master and apprentice. When you look at Ahsoka and Sabine, and you look at Baylan and Shin. And I feel like maybe the whole thing is Baylan was a little too loose with his training and didn't give enough structure to Shin, while Ahsoka was smothering, and she didn't give Sabine the time and space that she needed to fully succeed in the type of training, or just not understanding, like, Ahsoka was trying to teach like a Jedi and Sabine learns like a Mandalorian.
That's an interesting point. Huh. I could definitely see that. I really wonder what the conclusion of this is going to be like when it's when we
I don't think there's going to be one.
No. But we're getting such a huge, like, push for this master and apprentice feel. Yeah, man. It's definitely been a smothering from Ahsoka for sure, because it's just been this, like, strict, no, you have to learn this way, when clearly Sabine...
Do it better.
And Sabine is, like, this free spirit that can't be
Truly,
contained.
yeah.
Like, she's
That's
an
her
artist,
whole personality.
And, like... Yeah, like, just look at who you're working with, Ahsoka, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Just open your eyes a little bit.
Yeah. and I don't think the journey to speak to Anakin did as much as she thought it did.
It certainly doesn't feel that way.
Because she went very much back to normal Ahsokaville.
Mm-hmm.
She went to like, I'm going to speak to the space wells, and then we'll go, and we'll just trust them. And then immediately she got in and was like, okay, I'm back to Ahsoka.
Yep. I'm back.
So we'll see how it goes. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below on the whole Shin and Baylan, as well as the Ahsoka and Sabine matchups. And let us know your thoughts on how they're going to approach the quickly approaching sequel trilogy. As always, you can listen to the podcast wherever you find podcasts. If you want to pick it up on audio and then finish it up on the YouTube, you definitely can. And hey, check out our YouTube channel for all kinds of fun content we stream after each episode, and do a little fun spoiler free and then get into the spoiler details, fun little live stream. It's going to be good this time. As always, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.